CFOX.
So the Black Keys, at this point, they just keep getting bigger and bigger. How do you normalize that fame?
You know, I mean, I don't think that we went through this phase a couple of years ago where people started buying our records. A lot of people started buying our records. But you know, nothing lasts forever, and you know, I feel like it's kind of at this point. You know, I think it really freaked us out at first when people started when we started moving up into the big arenas for the first time. But now I just am you know, enjoying it while it lasts, because nothing lasts forever. So,
is it important to get away from it sometimes?
I mean, you know, I mean, eventually you get to the point where you'll always be forced to be away from it. So, while you're able to we're able to make music and play shows and do tours, you know, we try to do as much of it as possible.
How do you break? How do you step away from music completely?
It's something that I have no problem doing. When I'm on tour, I don't listen to music. We play it and I don't listen to it. When I go home from a tour, I don't listen to music. I don't force myself to make it. And what ends up happening is at some point I'll start missing it a lot and I'll get right back into it. But it's to me, music is like, it's my favorite thing. It's my job. It's my hobby. It's like everything I enjoy is based around music for the most part, you know. So it's something that I take like a lot of care with, you know. I think like it's something, when you have something like that, you don't want to burn it out. You don't want to abuse it, you know. So it's like, so like for instance, I make a living playing music, and I'm lucky to be able to say that. But that doesn't mean that when I come home from a tour, I need to get back to work. You know, I don't force myself to be around music unless I'm ready to be around it. You know what I mean?
You struggled as a band for a couple of years. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell you then?
Well, I never thought of us struggling. You know, we never looked at it like that. Everything's relative, you know. You know, you can't you know, the first time we came here to Vancouver was in 2002. We had somebody book this tour for us. We were getting like $50 a night. We stayed in a hostel here. We lied to cross the border to say we were recording, which I'm guessing the statute of limitations is up on that.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, let's hope so. But that was the move. Every band did it. You'd say you're going to come to Vancouver or Toronto to make a 7-inch. You know, we stayed in this hostel and we thought we were going to get murdered, and there was a bunch of junkies everywhere. But it was the most exciting time for us, I think, as a band, because you're like out going to places for the first time. You know, we had no money. We didn't know anybody. So you would show up in a city, you wouldn't even know where to go. You'd have a map and an address, and hopefully the club was still there.
Just a giant adventure at that point.
That didn't feel like a struggle, you know, and that felt like an adventure. It always felt like an adventure, you know. And I think, you know, I think Dan and I would have considered ourselves very, very lucky and successful for the past, since the very beginning, you know. So like this, what's happened in the past few years is something that we'd already, there was a time around late 2002, early 2003 when bands like The Strokes, The White Stripes, The Hives, you name it, you know, and there were a plethora of other bands that were just coming up around the same time. We're playing huge venues, and we always kind of felt a little bit like, you know, we would never be part of that, and that scene on that level, for various reasons, mainly because we were just like not we didn't dress very cool. We're just from Akron and we're just making music, and so we kind of like felt, you know, a few years later when we were still a band and making music and able to play to like a couple thousand people a night in New York and LA and Chicago, like we felt like we had beat the system, you know. We didn't have to be like cool, and we didn't have to be like we didn't have to compromise at all in any way. And also we saw some of those bands like break up and get into fights and start hating each other and various things, and we were still tooling around. And then that's right around the time when we felt basically that we had just kind of, that we had reached our peak and we were just kind of sustaining, and it was like comfortable. And if, you know, then that's when we went into the studio, and I think we made our most adventurous record. And I think maybe for me, maybe our best record, which was Brothers. And it just came out of this thing where the pressure was off. We felt like...
Why do you feel Brothers was the best?
Because of what happened afterwards. I'm not saying that. I just think that making that record was the best experience. It was just like this quick thing. We made this album, and we just, you know, we were hoping, I know the first week our label was hoping that it could sell 40,000 copies the first week, which is a lot of copies, and they thought maybe we could sell 200,000 copies of that record in a year, which are all big, huge expectations. But it ended up blowing up. It ended up selling a lot more than that. And all these things happened that we weren't even sort of expecting to happen. We'd made this record, it was coming from this place of total comfort where we felt like kind of already totally accomplished, and it just changed the game for us. Like, we ended up becoming one of those bands that we thought we would never be, that were like on the cover of magazines, and then the pressure was on for the next couple of years for me.
Well, that's just it. You mentioned how you were in Akron. I mean, the public perception of you now is Patrick, music star. Who were you in high school?
I mean, I'm always surprised people even know who I am, but in high school, you know, I mean, I worked a lot. I always had a part-time job. Like, I never played sports, and with my free time, I would play music with my friends. But I would work like 30 hours a week, starting my freshman year. And I saved all my money to buy music stuff, 4-tracks and basses and guitars and drums. I just wanted to play music, and I wanted to be in a band.
Drummers always have to take care because there's so many things that can go wrong with it's such a physical instrument. How do you take care?
I mean, you know, I don't really. You
feel the effects
of playing drums?
Yeah.
You know, I work out every once in a while. I do like every day. I do like 15 minutes of. This is all recent though. Somebody told me I would have major back problems if I didn't start doing. Okay. I don't work on my core. I don't know, man. For me, you know, I don't know. Drumming is just. I know people who have hurt themselves doing it, but I never took a lesson. I don't have any technique, like, that's correct. But yeah, I think I stretch my wrists. That's the most important thing. I don't know. Maybe one day it'll catch up with me, but I don't know.
What about music? Is a song ever finished, or are you always looking at it as a functioning piece of art?
Yeah, no. I mean, that's the most important thing about making music is knowing when to end the process of writing a song. Most people take way too long with that. I think a song is done the minute you start second guessing it. Then you should just move on. And then in the live context, you know, for me, every time I sit, you know, like, this is one of the things going back to me not like playing music when I'm home, when I don't feel like it. Like, I don't view music as like this thing where you have to sit down for 8 hours a day and rehearse. At one point, when I was in 5th grade, I wanted to play the trombone, and that was the way it was presented to me. Like, you have to rehearse 4 or 5 hours a day. That is not what music is for me. It's something that I want to do whenever I want to do it, and because of that, like, because I don't have any technical like tricks really, but basically my knowledge of how to play drums is so flimsy in a way, but it's also totally ingrained in my mind, like what I kind of like to do. When I step away from playing the drums for like 3 weeks, like this break, I didn't touch the drums once, but from September 30th until our show in Minneapolis, whatever. But when I do sit back down to play the drums, something changes every single time I take a break. And I always like it. It keeps it interesting to me. I'll forget how to do something in the middle of a show, and I'll replace it with something quickly. And that's, to me, that's like the evolution of the song, but that's more of an evolution of playing. But yeah, for me, a song is definitely done. And it should be done after a day or two. It shouldn't like take longer than that to write and record a song. It really shouldn't. Like, lyrics are different. Lyrics can take time, but like the music, like, I think the main thing is as soon as the band starts losing interest in a song and working on the song, then the song is done.
Is a song better if it comes from happiness or sadness?
I mean, a song's always better if it comes from a dark spot, really. It's just the way it is. Or fear or something, you know. I don't like happy music. There isn't anything I would listen to that I would consider happy. I mean, I like, when I listen to the Beatles, who are my favorite band, it's just the darker, even though there might be like a major kind of melody, it's the darker stuff that I like, you know.
You're loved all over the world. You have fans globally. But how do you feel about your band? Do you feel like the Black Keys are a good band?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a band is always something that should be striving to be better, you know? And so I think that, like, you know, Dan and I, you know, I think we always look at our music as we haven't made our best record yet. Like, we could always do better. You know, but I'm proud of our band, you know. I mean, I think the whole thing with the Black Keys, like, I think, you know, they'll never be a band as like good as a live band as like the Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin, and they'll never be a band that's truly as like innovative as like the Beatles or Pink Floyd. So, like, you know, I think that a real interesting part comes down to like not who's the best, but just the individual journey of a band. I think that's what people get kind of interested in. Every band has their unique thing, you know. And you know, we were heavily influenced by like a lot of like the things that were happening when I was in high school. Like, as far as like, you just get in a van and you tour. These are all bands that kind of like are taking cues from bands from the early '80s, like the Black Flag. Even though I don't listen to Black Flag, you know, that type of like, you can just get in the van and play a house show, and like that's a level of, it's like that's how we got things started, you know. So I mean, I think like for me, the real kind of interesting thing with the band is that the band is two friends that we weren't even like friends in high school. We were acquaintances, you know, but we like were lucky enough to live a few houses away from each other, and our brothers were best friends, and they kind of encouraged us to get together and play music, and we would occasionally, you know. And we both had, he was kind of coming from a different spot than I was as far as music goes, but we did share this kind of interest in a lot of kind of, I guess, blues-based music that none of my other friends cared about. And none of his other friends cared about the stuff that I was also into, you know. So it became like this thing, and it was this fun, like, bond that only him and I shared. You know, we're just like two kids in Akron, and we started this band and made this record. in a basement, and then we realized that we had to tour and book shows, and it was just basically started from my parents' basement. And now, you know, the like over the past 13 years, it's been pretty insane. You know, it doesn't feel like it's been 13 years at all, but it definitely is. When I sit down and like think about like every time I've been to Vancouver and like the evolution, like it's natural, but it's surreal, you know? It's like playing, I forget the name of the first place we played. I think it's called like the Gold Club, or I don't even know. But then going from there to like Richard on Richards, and then the Commodore Ballroom, and wherever else we've played. I think we've probably played like 10, 12 venues here. It's pretty bizarre. But I do know that, like, for me, that's kind of the thing. It's like, I know, like, when I was in high school, I loved Devo. They're from my hometown, and they were this band that started in a basement at their parents' house, made a demo that got into the hands of like David Bowie and Brian Eno. They made some awesome records for Warner Brothers, and that was like, for me, like the biggest inspiration was like looking at bands like that. You can just start so small, and then you can maybe accomplish a lot. And I think, like, you know, it took us like 10 years to maybe get be technically commercially successful, but it took us like 1 year to feel accomplished and like we were doing it, you know what I mean? And I think that the important thing to take away from our band really is, like, especially for like somebody who's in high school listening, is that it really is like, I'm not a very good drummer, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be fucking good at anything. You just have to really care about it, and you have to just do it a lot. But for me, like I said, I've always made sure that music has always been something fun for me. You know, so it's like this fine line of like, you know, having a good work ethic and knowing how to not abuse your passion, you know. But really, when I think about it, like, it's like, it's insane. It's like our whole career is just, it is so random, everything about it. And that's like, the other thing is, like, I know a lot of great musicians who should be doing what we're doing right now, and more so than we should be, but that's just not the way the world works, you know. So you can't, if it hasn't panned out for you, you can't be resentful, and if it has, then you have to be grateful, and that's just the way you have to be. But the minute you start feeling like you're entitled to it, is the minute that it will all crumble, because no one is, you know. And that's when you start becoming a prick.
Well said.
Yeah.
Patrick, thanks for doing this.
Thanks,
Real pleasure. Thank you.